Okay, hello and welcome to what is the 20th presentation in the Virtual History series. And while that is an incredible milestone in itself, today's program is the kickoff event for Doors Open Baltimore, the citywide festival of architecture and neighborhoods. My name is Nathan Denny's, Associate Director of the Baltimore Architecture Foundation. And I'm so happy to be with you today as we launch into a month's worth of Doors Open Baltimore activities. When we made the decision to make Doors Open virtual this year, we went big with over 30 programs throughout the month of October. Each week explores a different theme, beginning this week with African American heritage and civil rights. You can see all the offerings at www.doorsopenbaltimore.org. Next, thank you to everyone who donated to be with us today. Today's program is co-hosted by Baltimore Heritage. Your support has kept the Virtual History series going for 20 episodes and enables us to host programs like Doors Open Baltimore for free. And thank you to Doors Open sponsors, grants, and in-kind support. Your support was absolutely crucial this year. And now today's presentation. Joining us is Aaron Henkin, producer of Out of the Blocks and director of new local programming at WYPR. On Out of the Blocks, Aaron and co-host Wendell Patrick invite us to explore Baltimore with our ears, to listen to the soundscapes of its streets and the tapestry of stories hidden in plain sight. This afternoon, Aaron will share some of the stories that have resonated with him over the course of producing Out of the Blocks. We invite you to listen in. And Aaron also mentioned today that it's a birthday, so it's a very special day indeed. Please add questions you have for Aaron to the Zoom chat box. We will get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. With that, take it away, Aaron.
Thank you, Nathan. Hey, everybody, welcome. Hopefully you all can hear me. I have an elaborate audio setup here that I've, someone wished me a happy birthday. Thank you. It's a treat to be here. And I'm grateful for the honor of being selected to hopefully say, something coherent and intelligent and worthwhile, and I think it's going to resonate with the mission of Doors Open Baltimore. So I guess I'll just start by sharing a thought with you that I always try and remind myself of whenever people are kind enough to listen to me. Maybe you've heard of another public radio program that's called StoryCorps. It's on our radio airwaves every Friday. The way it works is there's these folks that have an Airstream trailer that they drive around from city to city all around the country. And the inside of this trailer is set up like a mobile recording studio. And they invite people who are friends or family or neighbors or loved ones to get together in this studio and interview each other. It's the brainchild of a guy named David Isay. And he said one time, quite simply, listening is an act of love. Listening is an act of love. I always remember that when people are kind enough to listen to me. So thank you for taking this time on. I know it's a slow news day today. There's nothing else going on. But even if you are a little distracted by the news, perhaps this little half hour, 45 minutes we have together will be a nice break from that and remind us, hopefully of our common humanity. So I'll start with a question. And that question is, how do you find stories that you didn't even know existed? This is it's kind of a riddle that I've dedicated myself to for many years now. And eventually, by hook and by crook, I came up with a kind of a remarkably simple solution. And that is that I talk to strangers. And I mean, I really talk to strangers like all day, every day. And this is sort of a counterintuitive way to live life, right? A lot of us have been sort of socially programmed to do the opposite. Our parents tell us, don't talk to strangers. But what I've come to learn is that if you can find it in yourself to break that rule, that don't talk to strangers rule, your average day is going to get a lot more interesting and a lot more meaningful. A little backstory, I guess, on how I wound my way down this road. I'm a public radio journalist. And a few years ago, this idea started percolating in my head for an unusual kind of documentary. I thought, what if I could go to one city block in Baltimore and make it my mission to meet and interview everybody on that entire block, just about life. I thought, like, what would that end up sounding like? What would I learn? And that's when I called my friend Wendell Patrick, who is my partner in crime on this project, my co-producer. He is a great electronic musician. He creates an original musical score for each episode. He takes all the photo portraiture that goes along with the episodes. I'll show you some of his photos today as well. Anyway, I called Wendell. I said, hey, can I borrow some of your instrumental tracks from some of your old albums to use as music in this weird project that I want to try? And Wendell said, he thought about it. He said, tell me more about this project. And so I did. And he said, what if instead of using my old tracks, I actually, offered to produce an original score for this thing that actually incorporates the sounds of the block into an original musical composition, which, what do you say to an offer like that? You say, yes, thank you very much. That would be incredible. So we teamed up. We picked a block. We had no idea this was going to be a series. It was just an experiment. So we picked the 3300 block of Greenmount Avenue as our block, and we got to work. And I made it my mission to hang out there for many, many weeks and to meet and get to know and eventually to interview everybody on the block about life, just life. And Wendell put it to music, and it was fascinating. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to share some audio with you as well from that first episode from Greenmount Avenue. So you should see the Out of the Blocks logo. And then let me move this. And here's a collage of people from Greenmount Avenue. And here's what they sound like.
I'm Mr. Dorsey at Dreams Boutique.
Teresa Marable, we're at No Limit Communications.
Zishan Kazmi, King's Fried Chicken.
你好，欢迎大家来到五月花苑仓。
Dimitri, we're at Stereo and Jewelry Exchange right now.
Michael D. Thornton, Miller's Financial.
Officer Charles Faulkner, Sector 2.
Tyrus Wong is our name.
Lishan Hapta Michael, address is Mama Grocery Store.
My name is LaShawn Glasgow. My name is Tiffany Thomas, and we're at Sheer Intensity Hair Salon. 3338 Greenmount Avenue.
3349.
3330. 3310.
I do my business by you on Greenmount 33rd.
So when we put this program on the radio, I remember listeners really responded to it in a way that I'd not experienced listeners responding to something that I'd done before. It really lit something up inside people. And I have to say, the people on the block, the people that I met and interviewed, they really responded to it too. It was kind of a phenomenon for them. Because, if you think about it, how well do you know your own neighbors on your own block? And what if all of a sudden you have this window into everybody's life around you? So we thought about this, and that's when we realized we might be onto something here, right? I'm going to play around with a little bit more audio with you and share a little bit of, I'll get a little poetic with you, right? I'll ask you to think about this entire city, Baltimore, as a mosaic, right? And each city block is a tile in that mosaic. And then if you zoom in, you start to realize
each block is actually a mosaic in itself.
And the tiles in that mosaic?
Individual human beings.
Each one with a story to tell.
Now, any one person's story is meaningful in its own right. If you put them together, though,
like tiles in a mosaic,
they can start to mean something more.
Here's another analogy for you. Each person on a block is like a musical instrument.
Every voice has its own tone and timbre.
Each story has its own melody line.
You put them together, and you get something like an orchestra.
Playing a symphony.
Playing a symphony.
By the way, I got to say, this idea is not rocket science, right? This is a simple, repeatable formula. So we thought, what if we tried this on another block? And we did. And then we did it again and again. And that is basically how this weird idea, this idea of one block, everybody's story, this many 8 years and 80 plus episodes later, has basically kind of turned into my life's work. Now, when you listen to these episodes of Out of the Blocks, one thing you don't hear a lot of usually is me. You hear the people on a block in their own words. You hear them on their own terms. You hear them in their own spaces. As a producer, I tend to make myself relatively invisible in the final edits of these programs. And I do that on purpose. I like it that way. But I'm going to go out on a limb with you guys today. I'm going to pull back the curtain, and I'm going to talk a little bit personally about the effect this work has had on me as a human being. And I guess I want to say that it's a really interesting mixture of joy and fear, right? That flows through you when you embark on this kind of journalistic leap of faith. Because, you know, we're all inherently skeptical creatures, we human beings, and who really wants someone, you know, showing up on your doorstep asking you to tell them your life story? It's a radical agenda that we have, which is basically the idea of having no agenda. And that is kind of hard to explain to people, right? When you tell people that, you know, you're interested in talking about what they want to talk about instead of what you want to talk about. When you try to explain this, you have to kind of be ready for some, you know, some side eye. This is totally understandable. It's part of the process for me. I've gotten very used to rejection. I've been mistaken for a salesman, a missionary, an undercover cop, many other, you know, presuppositions. This is all sort of par for the course of this getting to know you process. But the thing is, once a person realizes that you really are just there with nothing but your fundamental human curiosity and a microphone, there really is no end to what people are willing and able and really oftentimes eager to share about their lives. Conversations are like therapy. They are therapy for both parties involved, I think. There's nothing like the power of someone else's personal story to put your own life in perspective. I'm going to share another picture with you here. This guy's name is Clayton Williams, nicknamed T. I met him in West Baltimore on the 2100 block of Edmondson Avenue. And when I met Clayton, I learned a lesson about survival. Clayton actually has burns all over his face and his hands and much of his body. And those burns are from a fire that was in an abandoned row house where he'd been squatting. And nowadays, Clayton actually lives in the back of a broken down van in the parking lot of an auto shop over on the 2100 block of Edmondson Avenue. He's got it worked out with the guy who runs the auto shop to be able to stay in there, because to return the favor, he basically stays up as the night watchman in the yard there. This is Clayton's voice.
I'm 65 now, so I've been surviving for a mighty, mighty long time.
I'll show you a photo here of a gentleman named Spirochronis. I learned a lesson about gratitude when I met Spiro. He's a Greek immigrant. He works as a painter, and he starts his mornings very early before the sun gets up with a lot of other guys in the neighborhood down on the 4700 block of Eastern Avenue. That's the heart of the old Greek town. They all hang out at a coffee shop called the Greek Village Bakery. And when I met Spiro, we got to talking, and he got to talking about his wife. And when he mentioned his wife, he broke into tears.
I met, girl first day here, I guess, in Baltimore. And we're married now for 30 years.
Can I ask what's making you feel emotional right now?
I don't know, just all these years, I stay with the same woman.
You're crying tears of happiness right now.
Yeah.
I learned a lesson about resiliency when I met Tamikia Spellman. Tamikia runs a hair salon on the 4700 block of Liberty Heights Avenue. That's in Northwest Baltimore. We got to talking, and she told the story of being physically abused by her dad when she was a kid. She's a mom now, and she is absolutely determined to give her own children a different experience.
I didn't have a childhood. My childhood was horrible, very horrible. So I want my children to get the best out of theirs. The fact that I can sit here, talk to you, and smile, after everything that's happened to me, the fact that I can do that, that's only God.
The more people I've met and the more stories I've heard over the years, there's an idea that's cropped up for me that's kind of become like a North Star guiding principle for me. And that is the idea of treating everyone you meet as your teacher in that moment, your teacher for the day. Treat everyone you meet as your teacher for the day. And you're going to open yourself up to a whole new definition of education. Sometimes people will drop these profound pearls of wisdom on you. And they're not just words of wisdom, they're life lessons that have been learned the hard way. Their regrets, their hopes, their wishes, failures, triumphs. I'm going to talk to you now about a guy named Yusuf Ali. I met Yusuf Ali in Northwest Baltimore. He taught me a lesson about working with limited options. When I met Yusuf, he had, by the way, he's sitting on the steps of his old house where he grew up. It's condemned now. When I met him, he had just gotten out of jail for dealing narcotics, and he had court fees immediately in front of him that he had to pay, but he couldn't get a job because he had a criminal record.
And now you got to go back out here and sell drugs because you can't get a job fast enough. The drug trade is just not my only hustle. Man, you tell me cut your grass and for $50, I'm going to cut it. You tell me dig a hole for $100, I'm going to dig that hole. You know what I mean? I don't care what you're using the hole for. I'm going to dig it. You know, so it never stops.
I learned a lesson about principles when I met this guy, Khurshid Zaman Abbasi. His home country is Kashmir. And back in his home country, he worked as an independent political journalist. He was a reporter. And he did this work even while the Pakistani government would beat him and kidnap his coworkers for the work they were doing. Finally, it got to a point for Mr. Z, as everyone calls him here in Baltimore, that he had to flee. He left his home country. And today he runs a carry-out sub shop making sandwiches in West Baltimore.
I've been here now 18 years. I've been granted asylum. I'm a citizen of the United States now, and I feel free here. Overstuffed with the meats and shrimp.
Do you ever regret the decision that you made to write those bold journalistic pieces that caused this path to happen for you?
No, sir, never. I'm the person who stick to my opinion always. No regret at all. Not at all.
You know, sometimes you learn lessons not just from what people say, but just from how they say it. There are, I think, really interesting life lessons to be learned just in tones of bitterness, tones of resignation, tones of gratitude, tones of pride. And, you know, if you think about it, the human voice really has been our teacher for much longer than the printed word, really for as long as we've been human, right? We are hardwired to learn from each other's voices in the most elemental ways. This is Bumi O Jigbe. She's from Nigeria. It's always been her dream to have her own pharmacy. She finally made it happen on the 2100 block of East Monument Street.
Starting this pharmacy is a big step for me, and I'm grateful to God. Ba, 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 ba. It's a Christian song. It's saying, Baba, Eshiwo Baba. Just saying, thank you, Father. Thank you, my Father. Thank you, my Father. Ba, 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 ba. Eshiwo Baba. Eshiwo Baba. Mo wa dupe Baba.
I'm going to play you one more clip. This is from a story that a woman shared with me in South Baltimore. It was a couple years ago. And this is a story that really has stuck with me. It's haunted me, really, because I think it's a story about love. It encapsulates everything that's beautiful about love. It encapsulates everything that's tragic about love all at once. And, you know, we have photos of the people that we meet, and we have them introduce themselves by their name. In this very rare instance, I opted to keep her anonymous. So what I want to say to you about her before I play this clip is this is a woman who, she's an older woman whose boyfriend had been living at her house with her, and he left her out of the blue one day. And after he left, she was going through her medicine cabinet to find some vitamins or something. She found a bottle that she didn't recognize in her medicine cabinet, and it turned out to be medication for HIV. He had never told her. But the thing that just floored me was her reaction when she found out.
I love him. I mean, if I do got it, there's nothing I can do about it. But I don't want that man to die knowing that I didn't help him. I just really don't want him to die. That's it. He'll be back. I know he'll be back. So I'm just going to let it go at that.
There are the stories that you didn't know existed, and then there are the stories that you just can't imagine existing. When you treat every voice that you encounter as your teacher in that moment, I think you can really fundamentally redefine for yourself what it means to be educated. But the thing is, there's some unlearning that has to happen first before that door can open. Because we're all socially programmed, for better or worse, to keep each other at a distance, which has a special ring of irony to it as I say that today. But I'm going to go on a little scree here against the phenomenon of small talk. We're all schooled in the elaborate communal ritual of small talk, right? Think about this phenomenon of small talk. It essentially allows us to speak to each other and ignore each other at the same time. It has its purposes, obviously, small talk as a social lubricant, but this is the rule. This is the de facto rule we're all trained to live by. And I think maybe the exhilaration of actually connecting with a stranger in some sort of substantive way is partly the thrill of breaking that rule. Can it be uncomfortable? Yes. Does it take going out on a limb? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. When we can manage to outweigh the comfort of our isolation by our fundamental human curiosity and empathy and desire to commune with the people around us, we really can, I think, achieve a very simple and profound version of personal liberation. So I'll leave you with that thought. I'm here today to invite you to try the life of a rule breaker. Be an outlaw of small talk when you have an opportunity. Be a student of strangers. Be humble. Honor your curiosity. Ask real questions. And keep your ears open. And if you do that, everyday life could get a lot more interesting for you and everybody that you meet. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to take questions, talk shop. I'll unshare my screen here. And how do I do? Oh, here we go. Screen sharing, stop share. There we go. So that's my 2 cents today.
Thank you, Aaron. And if anyone has questions for Aaron, please put them in the chat box. Aaron, I have one question to get things started. So we've been in this global pandemic. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called COVID-19, but we've been in it for 6 months now, and all of us are doing these Zoom meetings and feeling zoomed out, and it feels like we're all isolated and disconnected. How do we make meaningful connections given the current reality that we're in?
You know, I would, I'm old school, but I like a good old-fashioned telephone call once in a while. I think there's something about the dynamics of a phone call that disembodies you a little bit more than a Zoom call, where half the time you're preoccupied with like, oh my God, does my hair really look like that when you're looking at your little Zoom square? Or, maybe you've got your Zoom thing blocked off, or the other person's got their thing blocked off, and you're like, are they there? Are you on mute? And that Zoom has this weird phenomenon where you can't make eye contact. It's impossible to make eye contact on Zoom. So, I like a good old-fashioned phone call. I feel like sometimes they're more personal than Zoom calls. And, we are at a point where we can walk outside and at least make eye contact. We can't see much of the rest of each other's faces with masks on these days, but we can make eye contact when we go out in the world and just walk around our outside environment. And we can have those happy accidents of wandering by someone you've never met before. And even if you don't end up in a profound conversation with them, at least waving at each other, acknowledging each other's existence. I think this Zoom world of ours is maybe a bit of a blessing and a curse. But I would say make a good old-fashioned phone call, or just go take a walk around the block and at least wave at the people you see. Even you don't have to say anything. Just make eye contact and acknowledge that you're there.
That's a great answer. Okay, we've got a question here about your process. And my cat Oriane here is participating too. So
I see him there.
Here's
a good listener
in the background. That's what that is. How long do your interviews last on average? And do you have a set of questions that you use to help people begin to share their stories?
Yeah. So the interviews usually, sometimes they'll go for half an hour. Sometimes they'll go for an hour. And so when you hear an episode, what you hear, really, the ratio of what I use compared to what I collect is pretty radical. You'll usually hear maybe a 3 to 5 minute audio vignette of someone, and that's taken from, sometimes an hour of conversation with that person and an hour of recording them, not just interviewing them, but recording them just sort of going about their life, whether maybe they're working at a corner sub shop. I'll do the interview, but then I'll just hang out and let them talk to customers. I'll let them chop cheesesteaks. I'll let them drop fries in the deep fryer, and I'll collect all those different scenes, think about the microphone as a camera. I'll get close-ups of certain sounds. I'll get wide establishing shots, and I'll take all those sounds and I can layer them together to create that sort of cinematic movie for the ear. But it's a lot of recording for a little bit of a result. And I think that has to do that probably is a big factor in the sort of quality and tone of what you end up hearing out of the blocks. Do I have questions that I ask? I have some questions up my sleeve. I don't bring any questions with me at this point. I just sort of follow my curiosity. I'll usually ask sometimes you can just start by saying, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that way you invite someone to share what they want to share on their own terms. And then it just becomes a matter of being an active listener and picking, and as I say, honoring your curiosity and paying attention to what piques your interest when they're answering you. But the questions, they can, because what I really want to get people to do is talk about what matters to them. It's sort of the opposite of the way traditional journalism works, where you have a story about a topic and you want to get people to talk about, their thoughts on that topic. This is, you tell me what your topic is. I'll do a little plug though. I had a moment of inspiration one day, and I just brainstormed 50 plus great sort of conversation starting questions and prompts, and I actually made, I'm going to show you guys this. This is a deck of cards out of the blocks, playing cards. And the cards, each card, you can play cards with them, poker, whatever your game is. But each card has a different question that you can ask someone, what does that say? What can you do today that you couldn't do a year ago? 9 of diamonds. What problem are you currently grappling with? So these make very good pledge drive giveaways. We give them away during pledge drives. And I should say also, you can find them at, we're a great partner and supporter of Out of the Blocks is the Peel Center for Storytelling in Baltimore. You can go on their website and find those card decks. And they actually made a really cool exhibit. If you go over there, we've just begun creating an interactive map of Baltimore where you can click on the different blocks. You can see them, click on them, and then you'll see all the photos of the different people on the blocks. And you can click on each photo and hear that individual person's story. It's a new way of interacting with the content, the archive, which is just a really cool user experience. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
That does. That's great. And that deck of cards is so cool. I need to get a copy of that.
Yeah, it's good quarantine fun.
Gin rummy that go late into the night, a lot more fun.
Yeah. Well, if you're stuck at home with your quarantine pod, it may be more than you want to know about the people that you live with. I don't know.
Okay, I have a question from Harold here, who has incorporated Out of the Blocks into his religious studies courses. And he asks, Can you talk a little bit about how spirituality emerges in some of your learning experiences?
Yeah. I've been. I'm going to talk about the spirituality of some people I've met. I'm going to talk about what it's done for me spiritually. And thank you for using this content in such a creative way, Harold. That's really cool. In the various episodes, you'll meet, every block has got usually some kind of a storefront church. And I'll hang out with the pastors and preachers at those churches, and I'll hear their stories, oftentimes stories of their own personal redemption that led them to their own faith and led them down the path of becoming a minister to others. I've met a really cool cross section of Muslims around Baltimore, Muslims from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan. I've met a lot of African-American Muslims, Nation of Islam guys. We did an episode on the 6300 block of Reisterstown Road in Northwest Baltimore, which is, I got a really interesting population of Orthodox Jews, originally from Russia and Iran, that kind of share that block with immigrants from elsewhere and, African-American population. I've had conversations with people who've struggled with their faith, who've left their faith, who've come back to their faith and rediscovered it. And I don't have an organized religion of my own. I never was raised with one and never have ascribed to one. But I feel like this has really changed me in a fundamental way, because I feel like when I go out and meet people and hear stories, I feel like listening to other people's stories has kind of become my religion. It changes me in a fundamental way. I mean, I'll wake up on a given day and just have to do whatever chores there are and get annoyed with whatever is going on, like all of us do. But then you get out and you get into a conversation with a stranger, and you all of a sudden walk in their shoes for a half an hour, an hour. At the end of that, it's like a sermon to me. And it's like I've been able to, benefit from some kind of transformative experience. And I hope that what I end up producing in that sort of distilled final product is, a reflection of that experience.
Great. And speaking of producing, how has the pandemic altered the way that you produce your work?
Well, it put a complete stop to it once we all went into lockdown this spring. And it really has forced me to put a lot of this work on the back burner. I got reassigned here at the radio station. A lot of us have gotten new, work responsibilities and stuff. I'm not alone in that. But I got reassigned to producing a daily news podcast about Maryland's response to coronavirus. It's a much more sort of straight ahead news format podcast, and it's daily. It's 5 days a week. So episodes of Out of the Blocks are fewer and far between now. But the ones I've done, I've gotten creative, but I've sent prompts to people via email and basically given them a tutorial on how to record themselves, like an audio diary. Then they send me back that audio, and I'll cut the audio of the various people together. So, you end up with something that format-wise resembles Out of the Blocks, but is all made with audio that people have recorded themselves. And I've actually teamed up with a video production team to start making some pilots of some episodes that are video versions of Out of the Blocks, video diary versions. We got the funding to send like a half dozen nice iPhones out to people who are on, who I know from previous blocks that I've met, to keep this phone for a week and to record a video diary with some prompts that I've sent them. So that's turning out to be a really interesting new direction for the show as well. Those episodes are not finished yet, but as we say in the radio business, stay tuned for those.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple process questions. I'm just going to combine these two into one, which is the first part is, how do you decide what block you're going to focus on? Are you throwing a dart at a map of Baltimore City? What's your process for that? And then how do you pick the people you're going to interview on that block? Do you ever talk with people who move to different blocks?
Great questions. I have thought about throwing a dart at a map of Baltimore just to ensure randomness. I've gotten really close to that. Actually, here, I'm going to show you this. I'm in my office, which is sort of a glorified supply closet here at the radio station. You see, if you look behind me, that's a map of Baltimore. And if you look, each one of those push pins in that map is a different block that we've gone to. I don't know if it shows up that well on my Zoom screen. But, we started... Wendell and I spent a lot of time walking around Baltimore, driving around Baltimore, and always with it in mind of like, oh, would that be, that might make for a cool block. And I think what makes a block an interesting contender for an episode is, a certain population density of folks who are there on that block, a certain quotient of mom and pop shops, interesting businesses. Sometimes there'll just be one or two businesses on a block that are just so irresistible that we'll do that block. The 400 block of Patapsco Avenue in South Baltimore had a shop in it that we went there and hung out and walked around one day. And it's called Patapsco Feed and Supply. It's a shop that's full of pigeons and supplies, and where guys hang out every morning who are all these old timers who race homing pigeons. And we were just like, kind of doesn't matter what else is on this block. We're going to do this block. And then, then we end up finding out, there are all kinds of other fascinating people on this block as well. So, we try to pick, actually, once we realize this is a series, and, going back to that idea of, the city as a mosaic, we realize like we kind of have a responsibility to go south, to go north, to go east, to go west, to find blocks that, represent different slices of life, different populations, different subcultures. We've done some very marginalized blocks. We've done some very ethnically specific blocks. We did a block in Roland Park, which was a leafy residential block, which, full disclosure, is the block that I live on. I did my own block as a season finale one year. And I did that because I thought this will really keep me honest in representing, Roland Park. We live on a block on Deep Dean Road. It's called Tuxedo Park. It's sort of the low rent district of Roland Park. It's a lot of duplexes. But I'll tell you, that block is probably the scariest block that I've ever done, because I knew when that episode was done that I would, have to walk up and down that block and see all my neighbors every day still. So, we've tried to get all over Baltimore. And I don't know, what was the other part of the question? How do we choose who we talk to? We try to talk to everybody. We try to talk to everybody we meet, but you come across a spectrum of skepticism. There are some people that will, like in any group of people, will share their entire life story with you the moment you meet them. We love people like that. And then there are some people who will, for perfectly legitimate reason, just want to keep you at arm's length for as long as possible. And, sometimes eventually they'll get used to seeing you around, used to you being there talking to everybody else, and they'll come around. And then sometimes they'll just won't. And so they won't be in the episode. We're not about trying to get people to participate if they don't want to. So it's, we say one block, everybody's story. The reality is one block, everybody's story who was willing to hang out and talk with us.
Great. And we have time for one more question here, Aaron. You shared some great stories that really resonated with you personally. Do you keep in touch with the people you interview? Do you follow up with them for second interviews.
Yeah. Facebook is awesome for that. I have a pretty wild collection of Facebook friends from all over Baltimore, because people will find you on Facebook, after you've met them. And so I message back and forth with a lot of people on Facebook from different blocks all over Baltimore. And, there's a lot of blocks in Baltimore have got, good places to get a bite to eat too. And that's been, a cool education as well. I can go up to the 4700 block of Liberty Heights because I know Caribbean Heat is there, and that, I'll get to see my friends there. Or I can go to Greektown and visit, the shops over there. And one thing I'm going to do this year, actually partly as a result of, the restrictions with COVID, is we're going to do a series of episodes that are kind of out of the blocks then and now. Because this series has been around long enough now. Believe it or not, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago when we made our first episode on 3300 block of Greenmount Avenue. So I'm going to make a concerted effort over this next year to get back in touch with everybody that I can on these previous early episodes, and to visit with them again, and to make another out of the blocks vignette with them, and to play and to put episodes of the podcast where you hear the original story and then you hear where they are now. Because now this thing has been around long enough that we can start to play around with the dimension of time as well as the dimension of geographical space in Baltimore.
Thank you, Aaron. And that concludes the kickoff lecture for Doors Open Baltimore. And we're so happy to have you join us on your birthday of all days. Happy birthday.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for joining and for listening. I really appreciate it.
And if you want to learn more about Doors Open Baltimore and see the programs we have coming up, our website is www.doorsopenbaltimore.org. Our next events coming up this weekend, we have a family-friendly architecture workshop for middle school and high school kids that's being organized by the Reginald F. Lewis Museum and the Baltimore chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects. And we also have a fabulous tour of West Baltimore with the Baltimore National Heritage Area Ranger, Bradley Alston. And of course, all programs for Doors Open are free, so please attend as many as you can. Thank you, and I hope to see you at another one of these events. Bye, everyone.